You ever wonder why, no matter how hard you try, there's that asterisk, one person asterisk, who just won't leave your mind? They could be someone from your past, someone you're currently involved with, or even someone you barely had a chance to know. But for some reason, they stay showing up in your thoughts during quiet moments, in your dreams, or even in the middle of a busy day. It's not always romantic and it's not always logical, but it's almost always tied to something deeper, the emotional imprint they left behind. See, when someone triggers a deep emotional response in you, your brain doesn't forget it. Whether it was a moment of extreme happiness, deep hurt, confusion, or even just pure connection, those feelings create something like a stamp, an emotional tattoo. And unlike the ones we ink onto our skin by choice, this one lives in your mind and can resurface anytime, especially when you're alone with your thoughts. We often think that we're obsessed with a person, but in reality, we're obsessed with the asterisk feeling asterisk they brought us. It's that feeling that keeps us coming back mentally, trying to relive, reprocess, or even rewrite what happened. Now, here's what a lot of people miss. Emotions don't need permission to take up space. Your logical mind might say, "It's been months, I should be over them." Or "This doesn't even make sense, we barely knew each other." But emotions don't care about time, distance, or logic. The body keeps the score, the heart remembers the moments. And if that person was involved in a time where you felt seen, wanted, alive, betrayed, confused, or deeply understood, then your mind may associate them with those emotional highs or lows. And that association keeps them fresh in your memory. Let's be real, it's not just about missing them. Sometimes it's about missing you when you were with them. The version of you that felt desired, that laughed more, that dared to dream again. Or maybe it's the version of you that was hurting, questioning your worth, left hanging. Either way, it's not always about who they are, it's about what they made you feel. And because emotions are energy, if you never truly processed what happened, that energy stays in motion. That's why just hearing their name, smelling their perfume, or visiting a place you went together can trigger everything all over again. Sometimes people leave lingers, but because you surprise su inste, she of facing. But emotional imprints aren't healed by distractions or denial. They're healed by recognition. You have to acknowledge what they stirred in you. What part of you responded to them so strongly? Was it love? Was it fear? Was it the comfort of familiarity? Was it the longing for something deeper? When you start asking yourself these kinds of questions, that's when the healing begins. That's when you start taking your power back from your memories. But here's the thing, the mind is a storyteller. And sometimes it keeps someone alive in your thoughts, not because you truly want them back, but because your story with them was emotionally intense and unresolved. Emotional energy without closure loops over and over in your mind. Your thoughts revisit that person like a broken record, not because they're the best thing for you, but because the mind keeps returning to what it doesn't fully understand. Your brain says, "Let me figure this out." And in trying to figure it out, you relive pieces of the past over and over again. There's also a part of you that might be afraid to let go, because letting go feels like accepting that it meant nothing. And you know in your heart, it did mean something, but letting go isn't about erasing the memory or pretending it wasn't real. It's about honoring the emotional imprint, learning from it, and then releasing its hold over your future. So if you're wondering why someone is still on your mind, ask yourself this: what did they awaken in you that you haven't fully faced? Sometimes the person is just the mirror, the reflection of your own unmet needs, your deepest desires, or your unresolved pain. And it's okay to feel that. It's human, but you don't have to stay stuck there. The mind remembers what the heart hasn't yet healed. And healing doesn't always mean forgetting. Sometimes it simply means understanding why they mattered, why it hurt, why it felt so good, and then choosing to move forward anyway. Because you deserve to be present in your own life, not trapped in a memory of someone who may no longer be a part of it. Have you ever found yourself replaying a conversation in your head over and over again, or wondering what could have happened if things had gone just a little bit differently? That lingering feeling, when someone remains on your mind far longer than they physically remain in your life, often comes down to one powerful truth: there's unfinished business. A lack of closure can trap the mind in a loop, keeping you mentally tied to someone long after they're gone. And most of the time, it's not because you're weak or obsessed, but because your soul craves resolution. Your heart wants an ending that makes sense. Sometimes people leave abruptly without explanation. Maybe it was a breakup that came without a real conversation. Maybe someone ghosted you, or simply drifted away without acknowledging the shift, and in those moments you're left with a puzzle that feels like it's missing its final piece. You keep thinking about them, not necessarily because you want them back, but because your mind is trying to understand why. Why did it end like that? Why didn't they say what they really felt? Why didn't you speak up when you had the chance? That mental search for closure creates a loop, and that loop keeps them alive in your thoughts. It's human nature to want to complete stories. Our brains don't like loose ends. When we don't get the closure we need, we start creating our own narratives. Maybe they never cared. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe if I had done this differently, things would have changed. And each time you imagine these scenarios, you're mentally bringing them back, again and again, hoping that if you can just understand it better, you'll finally be free. But closure doesn't always come from the other person. In many cases, it won't. Sometimes closure is a decision. A choice to accept what you didn't get to understand. A choice to stop holding onto the hope of a perfect ending. Unfinished business doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle. It's the hug that lasted too long, the message you never replied to, the conversation you were too afraid to have. And while you might have convinced everyone around you that it's over, that you've moved on, your mind is still there, stuck in the space between what happened and what should have happened. That's why they stay in your thoughts. That's why their name still stings. It's not just them. It's the ending that your soul still aches for. But there's another layer to all of this that we don't talk about enough. It's the way our brains get addicted to the feeling someone gives us. And that's where dopamine comes in. You see, when you're around someone who makes you feel good, whether through attention, affection, unpredictability, or even emotional chaos, your brain gets hooked on the chemical high. Every text message, every compliment, every deep conversation, that wasn't just emotional, it was chemical. And over time, your brain starts associating them with that hit of dopamine. So when they're gone, your mind doesn't just miss them, it misses the high. Think of it like this: they were your emotional drug, and now that it's gone, your brain is looking for its next fix. That's why you find yourself checking your phone, wondering if they'll call. That's why a random song can make your heart race. That's why your mind keeps wandering back to them, even when you they weren't good for you. You're not crazy, you're chemically conditioned. And sometimes what you're craving isn't even the person, it's the feeling they gave you, the escape. The thrill, the fantasy, the hope. We often romanticize memories. We hold onto the best parts and block out the rest. That's how the mind protects us, but it also keeps us stuck. You remember how they made you laugh, how they looked at you like you were magic, how they said all the right things. But do you also remember the silence, the confusion, the inconsistency, the parts that didn't align? Probably not as clearly. That's dopamine playing tricks on you. keeping you chasing a version of a person that might not even exist anymore. And here's what makes it more complicated. The withdrawal is real. Letting go of someone who gave you emotional highs can feel like a crash. You feel empty, restless, even depressed. That's not just heartbreak. That's chemical imbalance, and that's why healing can be so hard. You're not just letting go of a person. You're retraining your brain, teaching it that peace can be more powerful than excitement. That clarity is better than chaos. That real love doesn't need to come with highs and lows. So, if someone's been on your mind constantly, ask yourself, is it because of what they meant to you, or is it because of what they triggered inside you? Is it because the chapter never really ended, or because your mind is craving the emotional fix? When you start to answer those questions honestly, you'll realize that sometimes thinking about someone constantly isn't love. It's just unfinished healing. And that healing begins the moment you stop searching for answers from them and start finding them within yourself. Have you ever caught yourself thinking about someone out of nowhere and wondering why they still have such a grip on your mind? You've moved on, or at least you've told yourself you have, but then a memory hits, a laugh, a glance, a place you once went together, and suddenly you're back there again, back in that moment, back in that feeling. It's not always because you're still in love. It's not even always about them asterisk. Sometimes what's really happening is much deeper. It's your brain chasing a chemical high it once experienced through that person. It's dopamine at work. The truth is, when someone consistently made you feel good, maybe it was through attention, affection, excitement, or unpredictability, your brain starts to associate them asterisk with pleasure. Every notification from them gave you a hit. Every compliment, every inside joke, every flirty glance triggered a little spike. You might not have realized it then, but you were getting emotionally conditioned, and just like with any addictive behavior, when it's taken away, the brain panics. You're not necessarily in love, you might just be in withdrawal. That's the thing about dopamine, it doesn't wait for logic. It doesn't ask whether the person is healthy for you. It doesn't care about your red flags or what your friends think. It only remembers the feeling, and because that person felt so good to be around, even if the relationship itself was unstable or short-lived, your brain is wired to crave more of that feeling. So, naturally, you start replaying moments in your head. You start hoping they'll message again. You find yourself reliving old conversations like a favorite movie scene. And before you know it, they've taken up residence in your mind not because they deserve it, but because your brain got used to that emotional reward. And here's where it gets even trickier. When you're in a low place, when you're stressed, lonely, or overwhelmed, your brain automatically reaches for the last source of comfort it remembers. And if that person gave you even a brief sense of excitement or peace, they become your default memory. That's how the cycle begins. The more you think about them, the more your brain rewards you with a dose of emotion. The more emotional you feel, the more you think about them. It becomes a feedback loop. And unless you break that loop, they'll keep showing up in your thoughts, even when they're not physically there. But it's not always about chemistry. Sometimes someone stays on your mind because they represent something much bigger than themselves. They're a symbol, a mirror, a reflection of what you deeply desire or what you feel is missing. Maybe they made you feel safe, and that's something you rarely experience. Maybe they brought out your playful side, or made you feel attractive, or made you believe in love again. And so it's not really them you're clinging to. It's the version of yourself that came alive when they were around. That feeling is powerful, and when it disappears, it leaves a gap, not just in your day, but in your identity. You see, we're not just drawn to people, we're drawn to how people make us feel about ourselves Sometimes they spark a light in us that we didn't know we had. They inspire us to dream, to be vulnerable, to open up in ways we hadn't before. And when it ends or they leave, it feels like that part of us is gone too. That's why they stay in your mind, not because you can't live without them, but because you miss who you were with them. You miss the story you were writing together, and you miss the hope it carried. Other times, someone stays in your thoughts not because of the good, but because of the lesson they left behind. Maybe they hurt you, maybe they walked away without explanation, maybe they exposed a wound you didn't know you had. And now they live in your mind, not as a source of joy, but as a question mark, a trigger, a warning. They represent a part of your journey that still needs healing. And until you heal it, your mind will keep bringing them up, not as a punishment, but as a reminder that something inside you still needs attention. The truth is, thoughts are not always invitations. Sometimes they're reflections of who you were, what you needed, and what you're still learning. And just because someone is on your mind constantly doesn't mean they belong in your life. Sometimes they're just a character in a story that taught you something. A story that helped you grow, but that story doesn't have to define you forever. So, if you find yourself thinking about someone too often, take a step back. Ask yourself, is it really about them, or is it about the version of you that you're still trying to hold on to? Is it the feeling you're chasing, the closure you never got, or is it the identity you're still trying to rebuild? The answers won't always come easily, but asking the questions is how you start taking your power back. Because freedom begins not when they leave your mind, but when you no longer need them to feel whole. Sometimes the reason someone is always on your mind has nothing to do with who they are right now, or even what they meant to you in the past. It has everything to do with what they represent. We often attach people to ideas, to dreams, to versions of ourselves we long for or miss. You might not even realize it, but your thoughts aren't just about the person, they're about something deeper, something internal. They reflect your unspoken desires, your unresolved needs, or the parts of yourself you haven't fully claimed. You see, some people come into our lives not to stay forever, but to awaken something within us. Maybe they reminded you of what it feels like to be seen. Not just noticed, but really seen. Maybe they made you feel confident again after a long time of feeling overlooked or unworthy. Maybe they gave you a glimpse of a love you never thought you'd find, or maybe they simply made life feel exciting, purposeful, new. And because they represented that feeling, they became the symbol of something more than just a person. They became a portal into a life or identity you crave. We don't always get emotionally attached to people. Sometimes we get attached to the possibilities they opened up in our minds. That's why they linger. Because thinking about them feels like thinking about hope, about a dream that almost came true, about a version of you that was finally happy. So when they disappear or things don't work out, you don't just lose them, you lose what they represented. And that can feel devastating, even if your time with them was brief, and it's not always the good memories that keep them alive in your mind. Sometimes they triggered a wound in you that you hadn't confronted before. They made you question your worth. They touched a part of you that still doubts whether you're lovable or enough or chosen. So now, every time they cross your mind, it reopens that feeling, that fear, that insecurity, and because we want so badly to rewrite that story, to prove that we're worthy, our minds keep circling back. Not because we love them, but because we haven't healed from what they brought up in us. And then there's the fact that, in your mind, they might still be attached to unfinished potential. The what-ifs, the if-onlys. What if they had stayed? What if the timing had been right? What if I had shown up differently? These thoughts don't just keep them alive, they build them into something bigger than reality, a version of them that lives in your mind rent-free, but may not even exist in real life anymore. That's the trick your brain plays when it doesn't want to let go. It convinces you that what you lost was perfect, when in fact it was probably just asterisk familiar asterisk. It was something your heart wanted to believe in, even if it wasn't truly aligned. Sometimes we hold on to people in our thoughts because they allowed us to escape from our current reality. They were the distraction, the fantasy, the pause from pain, and even if they're gone, your mind still runs to them in moments of loneliness or uncertainty. Not because they're your future, but because they were your comfort zone, and it's okay to acknowledge that. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. But what matters most is that you begin to recognize when someone's presence in your mind has more to do with you than with them. Ask yourself, what part of me did they wake up? What did I see in them that I want to experience again? Is it love? Is it validation? Is it adventure? Is it security? The answers will always point back to asterisk you asterisk. Because often the person isn't the source, they're just the symbol, a reflection of what your soul is longing for. And here's the beauty of it. Once you understand what they represented, you can begin to pursue that feeling within yourself. You don't have to chase it through a person anymore. You can create the life, the confidence, the love, or the peace they once mirrored back to you. You can become the version of yourself that they brought to the surface. And when you do that, they start to fade not because you've forgotten them, but because you've reclaimed what they temporarily gave you. The goal isn't always to stop thinking about them. The goal is to understand asterisk why asterisk you're thinking about them so much. Because when you find the root of your thoughts, you also find the power to let go, not just of the person, but of the version of you that believed they were the only way to feel whole again. Sometimes people come into our lives just to remind us what's possible. The mistake we make is thinking they asterisk our asterisk the possibility. But truthfully, you were the source all along. They just helped you see it, and now that you've seen it, it's yours to keep.